record on his computer. Okay, and then I will stop recording when we do Q&A sessions and we open up to participants, but we'll be able to record our panelists and their responses to our moderated panel. So thank you all for being here again. My name again is Mario, and I will be serving as your moderator for this evening's panel. And so we'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves, but in their introduction, they'll also be sharing a little bit about their personal narratives. And so they'll each take turns a little bit about themselves. And then we have some prepared questions in advance, but then also we'll open it up to questions from everyone else. So we'll begin with introductions and we'll go alphabetically. So we'll begin with Evan.
Oh my God, that was a lot of pressure that I was not ready for, but thank you, Mario. Super excited to be here. And another big thank you to, of course, Fanon and the rest of the planning committee for wrangling us all together. So my name's Alan here. I graduated from UCSC in 2018. That is where I double majored in both political science and Spanish literature. And outside of that, I am a proud grandson of a Bracero guest worker. I'm also a son of immigrant parents. And so like many parents, my parents had initially migrated to LA, but like many Latino families, there was an influx from LA to an area called the Inland Empire, which, in case you're not familiar, is the area right between LA and San Diego. Some fun IE history for you. And so growing up, I was the oldest of four, and I always knew that I wanted to help my family out financially, just because, you know, my mom was a taquera who doesn't love tacos, and my dad was a construction worker, and I knew that that wasn't always going to be a feasible way of life. So I knew that education was going to help me kind of be able to contribute to a better future for my family. But, you know, more and more, I kind of learned that it was so many families that were left out of opportunities. And then at that point, I was like, hey, I got to do my part to help other people out, because there's a bunch of families of color, working class families who just keep getting the shorter end of the stick, and that's not fair. And so when I went to UCSD, I was involved in a couple of different things. I also wanted to help make the campus a much better place. And so I was involved in like tackling like campus climate issues. I was on the Mecha board. I worked for the Centro. I also ran the public service program at Marshall College. So go Marshall College. And, you know, it was there at UCSD where I really felt like, you know, I had a voice as a student. There were so many issues that we could really make a difference on. And, you know, we helped get more faculty of color, more students of color, more programs for students of color too. And so that really taught me about advocacy. And it was there where I met so many great mentors that helped me get my first civil rights job. You know, one of the first campaigns I ever worked on outside of campus was a criminal justice reform campaign at a civil rights organization. And then once that contract was over, I jumped to another civil rights organization right after I graduated UCSD, where I had a chance to go back to my home community and, you know, run a couple of civic engagement campaigns there. After some time doing work regionally, I was promoted to a national role where I was in super random places, Ohio, Missouri, Nevada, Utah, training people and getting them ready for the census that just happened about last year. And so once COVID hit, all of our work had to go into the digital space. And, you know, we had to work with all of our elected officials and get them set up on like using Facebook, Instagram, and all kinds of social media platforms to educate and engage their communities. And now I find myself, as a result of that and so many other things in my UCSC experience, now I find myself as a proud kind of first generation graduate, but also kind of a first generation tech professional, which I never thought I would be working for a company like Facebook. So I'm super glad to be on here and to be able to talk a little bit more about my experience and of course, get people through college, but definitely let them know that there are so many opportunities, that there are people there and happy to help. So that is it for me.
All right, I think we'll go alphabetically, which will probably mean Jasmine. Sorry, I had to go through the alphabet in my head.
Oh my God, does that work? I guess first names alphabetically. Usually I'm used to last names. Yeah, so I grew up in Long Beach, California. I am a second generation Long Beacher. Well, actually, maybe technically a third generation Long Beach resident. And, you know, I grew up as the oldest of three. My mom was 16 years old when she had me. So, you know, coming into college, it was a new experience. Nobody in my family had went directly into college. I had some family members who maybe later in life went to like community college. And then later my mom ended up going back to school at the University of Phoenix. So, I always knew that I needed to study hard. I needed to, try and get my education and get a degree in order to, make a change in the financial circumstances. And so eventually I came to UCSD, met some amazing folks. One of them is on the call right now. I won't say any names. And through that, I really came into my own and like really feeling like I was figuring out what exactly I wanted to do with my life. Right. Like all I knew was go to college and have a career. I didn't know what a career was, didn't know anybody who really had one. And there was really no roadmap that was laid out for me. And so through student activism, being involved with SAC, being an intern at the Cross Cultural Center, BSU, I was also an AS for a little bit. So just being involved on campus and being a student organizer really encouraged me to pursue a career in advocacy. So then I decided, hey, why not go to law school? Probably not the best decision I ever made, but I did make it. Going into law school as a first generation person in professional school was also its own struggle, dealing with the same campus climate issues at UCLA that I was dealing with at UCSD. Getting involved with student-led campaigns and then ultimately working closely with communities through internships and other kind of opportunities really cemented the work that I ultimately end up doing now, which is addressing the mass incarceration crisis here in the US, working on decarceration campaigns in states with high imprisonment rates. Right now, that includes Oklahoma and Mississippi. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Jasmine. Monica, you're up next.
Make sure I'm not on mute. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica. I go by she, her, hers are my pronouns. I graduated with the class of 2019. I walked in 2018, but I graduated in 2019. I am an Indigenous Latin scholar. My mother is from Mexico and my father has ancestral ties to the region where I'm from, Colorado, to the Indigenous people that live there. I basically started off college like most first gens do. I didn't have a lot of guidance. My father is a little older and he was part of actually the first school to desegregate in Denver, Colorado. As you can imagine, that didn't lead to very much opportunities for him in terms of higher education. He ended up dropping out and going back for his GED later. My mom is from a very small town in Mexico where they didn't have anything past middle school. Her family couldn't afford to send her to the big city to further her education, so it just wasn't an option. I was faced with a kind of different mindset because of my parents and their background. I was instilled super young, and I feel like that's like, very United States, very westernized, that education is the way out of poverty and that's the way to escape things. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I came to UCSD straight out of high school.
Oh no, I think she froze. Monica, are you there? I know she was saying she had a little bit of Wi-Fi issues earlier. Such a good story so far. I was like waiting for more. It's like when you're in a really good like Netflix series and you're like at that cliffhanger, right? You're just like, I want to know what happens next. All right. I think we'll go ahead and go with Paris and then come back to Monica. So I'll just private message her to make sure that she's able to connect. So Paris, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Paris. Please let me know if you can't hear me. I have my fan going because it's super hot in my apartment. My air conditioner is broken. So yeah, my name is Paris. I graduated from Warren College in December of 2020 during the whole pandemic. So that was super interesting and what I'll be talking about from my perspective. I graduated with a degree in communication. However, that wasn't my first choice. I originally came in as a media major, but a string of events happened that allowed me to kind of come to terms that maybe that wasn't the path for me. And I was able to switch into communication, which I mean, I absolutely adore. And I am very excited that I was able to graduate with this degree, because I am the first one in my family to be graduating from a college at all with any degree, associates or bachelor. Actually, it's going to be me and my twin brother. So that was a huge jumping off point for my mom when she originally I was adopted. And so I was I was born like 3 months premature. I was born at like 2 pounds, 5 ounces. So, you know, from the get go, they kind of were like, you don't really have a shot. So I've been dedicating my life to proving them wrong and making the most of, you know, what I can with what I have. And so when I found out that I got into UCSD, I like freaked out because I never thought that I would be able to get into a school as good and as prestigious as UCSD. And I originally was a transfer student. So I did 2 years at community college, and then I did 2 years at UCSD. And I definitely think that if you're a transfer student, like, don't let people tell you that that's, you know, don't let them hate on you for that. I definitely think that my 2 years at community college helped me prepare for time at UCSD. I didn't really have a lot of preparation in high school, so I didn't want to like go in blind, like straight out of high school to a college. So just those 2 years at my community college really helped me figure out what I wanted to do. And it really helped me, yeah, it helped me get here. But like I said, I'm first gen student, and I actually withdrew from UCSD my first semester, my first quarter here. It was really difficult for me to be away from my family and be away from my twin brother. I thought it was something that I needed. However, I think the timing and everything just wasn't right, because my mental health wasn't in a good state, and you know, I just wasn't able to perform well. So I was able to take a gap year between 2018, 2019, and then I came back in the fall of 2020, and immediately I hit the ground running. I was like, I don't want it to be a repeat of my first quarter here. So I applied to Warren as a student intern, and thankfully I got the job. And that really opened up a bunch of doors for me. The people that work there are amazing. They're just like family. And yeah, I was a student intern. I worked in student activities. I was able to create a bunch of programs dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion and advocacy, which is something that I find myself to be very passionate about, and that I was able to explore more with my communications degree. And yeah, graduating during the pandemic was just a whirlwind, to say the least, because you're sent back home 3 months earlier than than you think you're going to be. And it's just, everyone's like, what are you doing next? Like, what's next? And I'm like, I don't even know how to work Zoom yet. Like, I don't know. But yeah, it's been an eventful few months since I've graduated. I mean, I'm currently working as a pizza delivery driver, which is no shame at all. Like, totally love that job. I gotta do what I gotta do to get by. It's just been super hard trying to find comm jobs in my little town, because I live in a small rural town that was affected by a wildfire and kind of still trying to work its way back to normal. And so jobs are really hard to get, and it's been difficult, to say the least. But I'm pushing through it. You know, hopefully I've been applying to some jobs. Hopefully I'll be hearing back from some of those. But yeah, I can't wait to tell you guys more about my experience as a first gen student. And I hope you guys are having fun at UCSD so far.
Cool, thank you, Paris. And Monica is back on the call, so we'll transition back to Monica. If you want to pick up kind of where you left off.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened with the Wi-Fi, but it was just not it. So I'm on my phone now. But back to what I was saying, just like little recap, my parents didn't really really didn't have the opportunity to give me a lot of guidance in terms of what I was going to study. So what they did was they very strongly enforced upon me that I should be an engineer because they had heard that that's where the money is. And, you know, when you're from poverty, your main goal is to do anything that you can to get out of there. So they were literally like, engineers make money, like that's the way to go. And I was like, oh, okay. And then 2 years in, after being a bioengineer in Warren, I was like, I don't like this. But you know, I had really great mentors. A few of them are on this call that were really able to, you know, shed the light on me that this is, and ultimately it's your life and you need to make decisions based on you, on what you like, on what's going to make you happy. So I switched my major and my GPA went phenomenally up when I was studying what I wanted to. So I switched my major to physiology and neuroscience, and I also got minors in cognitive science and humanities. Yes. So basically what I was able to do once I was studying stuff that I liked was I was kind of able to pull myself out of a depression that was happening, you know, mental health, important to talk about, because I was much happier studying what I was studying. I was able to branch out more and join different things. I was part of like the multicultural orgs, also Greek life, AS, Warren Student Council. I was an orientation leader. So it was just like a plethora of things that got better once I was studying what I wanted to. And I was also able to get internships. So I took summer internships because a little internship is better than nothing. I literally started by washing out Petri dishes and making media for the labs. You know, nothing is too small to start. And then after graduation and holding down a few of those different internships, I was able to get a job at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I was a molecular biologist there for a little over a year and a half, and I actually just got a new position. So I will be starting as a research associate next week at a smaller biotech company called Bio Nanogenomics. Thank you. And with that, I also can give a little advice and talk to applying to medical school as a non-traditional graduate. No one gave me the guidance to understand what was going on in undergrad. So no one was able to tell me how expensive medical school is to just apply. What is that? So right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm saving up money to go through that application cycle when I feel like my student loans are at a good point where I'm financially able to do so, afford to fly to interviews, and even just to apply to schools. So I can also speak a little bit to that in my journey, like going towards that. Thank you. I'm sorry about that again, but we're back.
All good. Thank you, Monica. And last but not least, Samantha.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see everyone. It's good to meet everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Samantha Champy. My gender pronouns are she, her, and hers. I graduated from UCSD in 2017 from Thurgood Marshall College. I am a proud first-generation college graduate. I am a proud daughter of Cambodian refugees. My parents endured and survived the Khmer Rouge, which is the Cambodian genocide that occurred in the 70s that wiped out 2/3 of our country. And so everything I do for them. I am the youngest of 5, and being born here in America, similarly to a lot of you, my parents were just like, we've heard that education is the way, right? We don't know how to get you there, but like go to college, right? So that was always the option, and that was always the goal for me. In terms of when I was in high school and applying for different universities, my siblings did attend college. However, because we were all low income and my parents struggled with money and yeah, just finances in general, none of my siblings told them the cost of college and the cost of going to university. So they thought it was free. So when I was applying, they were like, how much is this? Like, what is going on, right? And thankfully, when I was applying to UCSD, I received the Chancellor's Associate Scholarship. I was among the first cohort when Chancellor Koslaw created that scholarship. And so I'm very grateful for that. Otherwise, I'd be in debt. I was able to attend UCSD for 4 years and live on campus and come out debt-free. And I understand that privilege and I'm just so grateful to have had that. Yes, graduated from UCSD in 2017 with a degree in human development. As a first-gen college student, I came in, again, not knowing like how to navigate the system. And so thankfully, I was a part of the summer bridge program as well. That was everything to me. So when I, summer prior to my first year here at UCSD, I participated in summer bridge, and that's how I made my best friends that I still have today. That's how I learned about a career in student affairs. And when I was on campus, when I was a student, sorry, I'm getting nervous, but so I'm stumbling over my words. I worked as a peer mentor for a lot of different programs. And I learned that through summer bridge. After I graduated, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I took some time off. I moved back home to my parents' place. And that was a transition within itself, right? Being treated like I was 16 again, right? And they were like controlling everything that I was doing, or trying to at least. And when I moved back home and I landed a position in a nonprofit working with high school students, I knew that I wanted to be back in higher ed. I knew I wanted to become a director of some sort of program one day. And so I went on to pursue my master's degree at San Diego State University in their Educational Leadership and Student Affairs program. I graduated in May of 2020, last year, in the height of the pandemic. So similarly to Paris, I graduated in the pandemic. We didn't get to walk. We didn't get to have, too much of a celebration, but it's a huge accomplishment. So congrats to us and to the, graduates that will be graduating this year. And I was unemployed. I was unemployed for 8 months. And it took a toll on me. I felt a lot of imposter syndrome. I felt like it was a lot of me. I was applying to positions, but there was a lack of, right? Because there were so many hiring freezes in education and in every field, right? And I was like, it's me. And that's something that I definitely struggle with, but I'm working through. Continue to apply to positions. And now I currently hold 2 part-time roles. I am an academic coach for Foothill College, which is a community college in the Bay. And again, because of the pandemic, thankfully, I'm able to work for them virtually and support their student veterans over there as an academic coach. And then I also work for UC San Diego in the health side. I'm an admin assistant for their nursing education program. Again, just happy to be here and share more of my experiences with you all.
Well, thank you all. So we have some prepared questions in advance, and the first 2 are focused primarily on your experiences as undergraduate students. So if anybody would like to share, what were some of the barriers that you experienced towards your persistence at the university, and how did you overcome those?
I can go in a little more detail about, since I had that little withdrawal period. So yeah, when I first came into UCSD, like I said, I was super excited. I was stoked. I had this image of like what, a college was going to be like, because my community college was like small, we did like events and everything like that, but I like wanted the college experience. And I think building it up in my head caused me to just kind of caused like me to just have a bunch of anxiety when it came down to me actually coming to UCSD. And obviously I didn't know anybody. I had no friends. I'm away from my twin brother, who I literally spent like 21 years with, like side by side, every class we took together, even in community college. I think we had like 2 classes that we weren't like in together. So it was just a really hard transition period. And I felt like it was kind of difficult as a transfer student to find stuff that was orientated towards me instead of like first years. There was like a lot of events like getting first years together and stuff like that. But I was like, oh, I'm like a little bit older than these people. I've done the community college thing. We have not some things in common, but I just kind of wanted like that community. And like I said, it was like I had no idea about any of the resources. My first time, like none of the clubs or anything. And so I felt alone. I felt really, really alone. And it took a toll on me and my mental health. And I ended up withdrawing. And I took a year off. I came back home, and that was a very difficult transition period, because you just told everyone, I'm moving away, I'm gonna go graduate, like, and then you come back and they're like, what are you doing back, like what happened, all these questions that you don't even really know the answers to yourself and you're trying to grapple with. And so that was really difficult, but it took like a good support team from my mom and my like brother and my friends to like let me know that like this is normal to feel this way. We've been in school since kindergarten for like 12, 13 years. That takes a toll on your mind and your body. And so taking a break isn't a bad thing, because I kind of felt like I was punishing myself. I was like, you should have pushed through it, you should have stuck through it. But I felt like if I did stick through it, if I did push through it, then I wouldn't be I wouldn't be making myself happy in like a genuine way. Like, and so this break really helped me like come to terms like with myself and my like identity and everything. And like I said, when I came back, I not graduated. When I came back, I changed my major and switched into communication, and that opened up a bunch of doors for me. I found an internship over the summer with Oasis. I was a peer mentor with them. They're amazing. If you guys can try and find a position with them, I highly suggest it. They have a plethora of like different positions that apply to a bunch of different fields. But it really got me like focused in like student affairs and like working with like first gen students like myself and everything. And so when a position opened up at Warren, one of my friends actually, she had just graduated, and so she suggested that I try and get this job, and luckily I got it. And from then I was just like, I got I got into clubs because as an intern you have to help with the club. So I was part of WTCC. I was thinking of, yes, WTCC was like the main one, which is the Warren Transfer and Commuter Commission. And so they put on a bunch of cool programs like Transfer Social Hour. We hosted with Marshall College. And that was a great way to get like transfers all grouped up together and make friends and stuff. And that was really, really nice to see, because I could have used that. It was nice to have that when I was going through my hard times. But, I'm just glad that that was available for students too, like at that time, so that they didn't have to go through some of the struggles that I potentially went through. But yeah, it was a really hard first year. You gotta stick through the first year. But if you need to take your time, take your time. But yeah, I am very happy that I graduated. I really didn't think that I was going to make it. There were times where I was like, I can't do it at all. But like I said, having a good support system, having a good job and everything, a good internship just on campus, and a good mindset really helped me make it to the finish line. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paris. Does anybody else want to answer that question?
I can jump in here. I think, and I'm going to speak in the kind of eye, but I imagine that this is something that folks really experience. And for me, one of the hardest things that I always had to struggle with was money. We all spoke about how, growing up, our families didn't have much, nor did they know, or did they have kind of the networks to support us, right? And I remember that early on, before I even applied to school, I had a real conversation with my mom, and I was like, hey, how much do y'all think you can help me with? And she's like, what do you mean? That's 0.99, right? And I'm like, dang, I think that's for me when it became obvious, and it was a really eye-opening situation that I'm like, wow, the struggle is real. And like, I'm not even gonna blame them because it's not their fault, right? And this just shows how there are like so many barriers that impact, students like us in particular, right? And so I knew like senior year, not only was my job to get into college, but it was to get money. And so I was applying to scholarships non-freaking stop. I was like, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care if I can even get like $100, like that's gonna help with something, right? And so I was so thankful that, because of all these scholarships I was able to get like my education funded in real part. And I was like, if I can get through this first year, like I'll figure out the second one, and then I'll figure out the third one. By the fourth one, like a lot of my funds had ran out, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think about this far. I didn't think we'd make it, right? But my very last year, I was really lucky because I got a really generous scholarship from the UCSD Alumni Foundation, and I'm like, y'all don't know how much this means to me, but y'all just helped me graduate and get through that stage, right? And so even with these scholarships, like I imagine this was the case for many of us, I had to work nonstop. I was, I tell people all the time, I was like, I was an undergrad, but I was mostly working. I worked like at or over 40 hours, which is just the reality, right? Because, you got to pay for so many things outside of schooling. And, it was great, right? Because at like a very early age, I was able to get like a lot of experience. And so that meant that like after undergrad, I was able to step in to more senior-ish roles. But that also meant that, sometimes my grades took a hit. I remember it was like a vicious cycle right before like a midterm or a paper. I'd like have to bust an all-nighter or something close to it because I'm not down for that life. And I was like, Alan, you need to do a better job of studying beforehand. But honestly, it's out of my control because I got to work nonstop, right? And luckily, I was able to manage. I had a supportive group of friends that I made them take the classes with me. So I like right before midterm was up, I'd be like, hey, so did you get that? Because I'm gonna need you to teach me tonight. Right. And then luckily I had like a good set of mentors who were like, okay, take this class, take this professor, but not that one. Right. So like my professors, I was so lucky that most of them were either of color or they just knew the struggle, right? So like, whenever I needed to like turn in a paper that wasn't that good, or like needed an extension or just needed some understanding, like I always knew that, one way or the other, I can like figure my way out, right? But honestly, that was because of the support of my community, the village, right? Or like not the village itself on campus, but my village who was behind me. And that was also because, like I had divine intervention, even though my mom and my parents couldn't do much for me. One thing that's super real among like many immigrant, particularly Mexican Latino households, is just how they like grab onto religion. And so I knew no matter what, like I was kind of protected by this much larger divine spirit. And I'm like, one way or the other, I don't know what's about to happen, but it's going to happen. We're going to figure it out. Right. So I was super thankful that at least my parents can provide that support.
Cool. Thank you, Evan. And I know exactly what you're talking about. But, and then you both, Paris and then you both mentioned this a little bit, but if anybody wants to answer the next question, I dropped in the chat too. What were some support systems that you tapped into? So either community, family, or on-campus resources that you want to share with folks?
I can speak to that a little bit because I think I kind of did like almost too much of community outreach into UCSD. Like what we talked about and how I think that a lot of us feel, just to like, reiterate, it's not that our parents don't support us. I think it's that they don't know how to support us and they don't understand like really what we're going through. like my parents, when I was like, I'm literally having an anxiety attack in Geisel at 3 in the morning, and they would be like, Mija, just stop being anxious. And I was like, okay, let me just do that. Like that's not how this works. But what did help was finding other people to be anxious at 3 in the morning in Geisel with, finding those people that were going to be there with you. So like I said, I joined a bunch of orgs trying to find, like different communities, different people that, would make UCSD feel like a home away from home, like finding that support. So I joined Hermanas Unidas, which is like a multicultural org. I talked to obviously associated students. I was an associated student, so I talked to people in AS, Warren Student Council, like I said, Greek life. So I literally just like immersed myself into as many community places as possible until I was like, okay, these people really understand. And I think that I definitely felt that the most with like the multicultural org for me, because I was able to surround myself with a lot of people who were with very similar backgrounds, like low income, person of color, like doesn't really have that like support system from home that you need in terms of like academic success. So I definitely tapped into those, so that we could complain. We were like, hey, I have a midterm, but I haven't studied for it because I literally had to do 30 hours of work this week at, driving my golf carts. That's one of the on-campus jobs that I had to support going through school. I was like, I had to pick up a shift driving the golf carts, and I have not studied for this midterm. But then they'd be like, you know what? I haven't either. And I'd be like, okay, thank God. So it was just, like finding the people that made you want to study harder, but also that you could complain to and not feel bad about complaining to, just like that kind of thing of similarity. And I think that that helped to like transitioning into post-grad, is that all of us were freaking out about jobs at the same time too, where we were like, okay, we are going to set aside 3 hours every week to apply to jobs. We are going to set aside this hour at the beginning of winter quarter to bust out our resumes. We're going to go to those workshops, just like having people that will also hold you accountable to do those things is really good. So that's the support system that I found.
Oh, thank you. That's actually a good segue to the next question that we have. So it's, how did being a first generation student influence or impact your career choice or career pathway? So you were talking about, connecting with first gens as you were transitioning to graduate, but taking it further, how did that influence or impact your career choice or career pathway? And I think some of you mentioned this in your narrative too, if you want to talk more about it.
I can go ahead and answer this one. So mentorship has gotten me to where I am today. Ever since I was, in high school, I had a counselor who was like my second father going to school. And because of him, I made it to college, and then in college, I found those different support systems. And so I, in my eyes, I was like, I give my diploma, my high school diploma, to Mr. Ramos, and that's who my, advisor was. And then I went to college and I was looking for my new Mr. Ramos, and I found him in Oasis, right? And so I would always try to connect with as many people as possible. And again, back then, I didn't know that I could get a career in student affairs, right? I majored in human development and knew I liked to work with people, knew I liked to connect and build community, but didn't really know what that career was going to be. And it really wasn't until after I graduated from UCSD in 2017, and I started working for a nonprofit. I worked for Barrio Logan College Institute, and they had just started their Upward Bound program. That the director of that program was extremely young. She had just completed her master's and was like, Sam, if you want to do this, go back to school and get your master's, right? And so for me, everything that I've done, when I worked at UCSD, I've worked in multiple different peer mentor programs, supported CASP in their pilot, peer mentor program, which is continuing to thrive, to excel with IDE in Oasis. And so I knew I wanted to be back in higher ed. I know that everything that I do now, I want to support the next generation of students. And because I've been helped so much, right? similarly to what Monica said, it's not that my parents didn't support me or didn't help me. I particularly did not want to share my struggles with them because I didn't want them to worry. So I would always tell my parents, I got it. Don't even worry about it, right? So I would find that mentorship, I would find that counselor, that advisor. And that's how I know that at the end of the day, I want a career in student affairs. I know that's very broad, but I want it to be student facing. I've worked for communication and leadership. That's how I met Katie in my when I was a grad student. And again, I'm just continuing to put myself in positions where I want to see myself one day, right? And so, yeah, I give it up to all of the advisors, mentors, counselors, everyone that I've ever had, and that's what I want to be for the next generation of students. So.
And then Jasmine, you unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah, I can also share a little bit. And sorry, I'm like all over the place. I didn't sleep well last night. But I would say for me, my personal experience, being a first generation college student, it was very scary and challenging because I'm a type of person where I like to know what I'm doing and like the steps I need to take to get to where I'm going. But I also feel like it was very freeing for me. Like my family didn't put any pressure on me. They didn't say like, this is the career that you should aspire towards. I don't think that they even knew of different career paths or anything like that. They were just like, look, you've always been on your stuff. You would stay up all night doing your homework in high school. I trust that you will go to college and you would figure it out and do whatever it is that you're doing. So I think armed with that, like, of course I carried, sorry, people are blowing me up. Of course I carried my own like insecurities and concerns about going to school, but not having those external pressures, I think made it to where I was able to explore what I wanted to do. When I initially came to UCSD, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. I really loved AP psychology when I was in high school. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to talk to people. That quickly changed. I ended up minoring at one point in human development for like 2 months. And then I stopped doing that. Then I minored in classical studies because I took Latin in 9th grade and thought like, oh, I need to, like, I was all over the place. I ultimately settled on a double major in critical gender studies and sociology. I never had that pressure of like, oh, this is like, in the humanities, you need to go into sciences or anything like that. I never had that kind of pressure. And I was able to really explore, I think, through student activism and being super involved with different organizations during Black Winter, writing demands, putting pressure on the administration, both at UCSD and at the UC level, being the chair of the African Black Coalition, like just being involved and engaged. I was really able to shape and shift into my own awareness of issues I care about, thinking about like my own upbringing and things that I saw and was exposed to. And yeah, so I think sometimes I think about being a first gen student as like, oh, all the barriers I had to face, all the groundbreaking and like path making work I had to do in order to get to where I am. But I really appreciate that my family never put pressure on me externally to be something and do something in particular. One thing I would say that I wish I knew more about was financial literacy, because I was taking out all the loans. Let me tell you, I was taking out all the loans. I stayed every summer and took summer sessions so that I can have financial aid. I worked at the box office and I was an intern at the Cross Cultural Center. I worked at Jamba Juice too on campus when I first started. So I was working, I was going to like, what is a UTC, buying all the bags, like spending all the money, taking all these loans. I rushed into going to law school because I didn't want to be broke and not have a job. So I needed to go to school so I could take out some more loans. And now current Jasmine is having to pay for these mistakes. So learn from me. Do not take out all the loans. Do not blow your money at UTC. And like that is one of the things I really, when I look back at it, it's like that was a huge gap in understanding that I'm signing up for these loans at 17 years old, and that eventually they're going to have to be paid back with interest compounded. And I wish I knew better and moved differently in that regard.
Thank you, Jasmine. And this event is not sponsored by UTC, so I just want to put that out there. But
Absolutely not. They need to run us our money.
but this is a good segue to the next thing. And what advice would you provide to first generation students seeking a similar career?
I mean, I can start off since I went last this time. So in my career, I guess it's a little bit out of the norm since I'm not a lawyer in a traditional sense. Like I've never been to court. I don't do that kind of lawyering. But I would say a huge thing, and I've been on admissions committees, both when I was at UCSD and when I was in law school, I was on the admissions committee. And one thing I see when people are applying to schools is that, you know, they do not have any relationships with professors. They do not have any relationships with anybody who can write them a solid letter of recommendation. And I think for me, what was really amazing. Oh, what is it? Oh yeah. I got you. I talked to everybody about law school. But like what was really helpful for me is like building those relationships with professors. And I know it's hard. UCSD is a big school. People are busy. Everybody loves the same professors, right? But I think for me, it was really crucial in building those relationships so that folks can vouch for me, right? Like I didn't have the highest LSAT. My GPA definitely suffered after Black Winter, you know, so it's like having those relationships, whether that's at the school or internships. Like I know somebody had mentioned interning even outside of the school, or interning at the Cross, or interning at all these other centers that now exist that didn't exist when I was there because it's been that long. You know, I think that is super important in not only shaping what ultimately you think is possible, right? And what you might want to pursue, but helping you get there because yeah, you're going to blow a lot of money on those applications, and people vouching for you, people saying good things about you can definitely make a difference when, you know, you want the whole package being talked about and not just your academic record. So that's one bit of advice I would say is be true to yourself and make those relationships, leverage those relationships, find, like I was a part of UCLA Law Fellows, which was a great program with mentorship opportunities. I was also in Summer Bridge too, which was helpful in preparing me for UCSD. So finding these like different ways to connect, speaking with alums like me or other folks who are maybe doing stuff that you're interested in or have like, you know, an interesting path and you want to see what's up. Don't be shy.
I think for me, I'm gonna go next because I want to talk to Jasmine. So I wanted to make that shameless plug now. I'm like on an active campaign here. We're gonna be friends, Jasmine. Okay, so I'm gonna connect for sure. I know this is for the students, but like I'm being a little selfish, so I'm gonna connect for sure. I think for me, the like greatest thing I could have ever done without even knowing it was just to do as much as possible. Now I kind of say that with like an asterisk, right? Because don't do as much as possible, burn yourself down to the ground, and then like have to take some time off of school, right? Like, I think for me, I just kind of was always into a bunch of things. And like, you know, as an undergrad, you know, I did advocacy, student organizing, student affairs, like project management. And then in my last year, I was like, ooh, I really like this policy advocacy thing. I had done a policy program at Berkeley right before my senior year. I was like, I need to figure out what kind of like policy advocacy vehicle I want to pursue. So I did UCDC, went an intern for a congressman there. Afterwards, I was like, yeah, the federal government is cool, but not my cup of tea. So I'm gonna see like if I can get into some union organizing. And then like I got really interested in like how think tanks like do like policy advocacy of their own. And so I did a bunch of stuff where like I think it was all these kind of diverse sets of experiences that like made me a really great candidate for like my first quote real world job right after undergrad, because I had interned for a member who was part of the National Association of Latino Electeds, where they hired me. And then, I had done some community outreach work, and they were looking for like an outreach person. And then as an undergrad, working on all these issues, like, you're always asked to speak on them. So they were also looking for a spokesperson, right? And funny enough, I was thinking about this, but, just because UCDC is doing a bunch of things this week too. And I was like, 4 years ago, that's when I first started working for the federal government. And now I work for government partners at Facebook, right? And, it was my previous job and a bunch of jobs before, and just my network too, that, one thing kind of led to the next. And I get to kind of leverage all those experiences. So definitely get as much experience as you can now, because that's one thing I miss in undergrad. Like, you can't intern 3-4 different places when you're like an adult, right? I wish I could, that'd be cool. But, definitely this is the time, because as you do that, you build your skill set, but you also get to build your network. And these are people who can vouch later for you, especially as a first generation person. You really don't have those social networks, so you have to kind of build them on your own. So you just want to kind of have advocates everywhere. The kind of second piece I'll mention here is like right along the lines of imposter syndrome. Once you do kind of get that experience, know your worth and know your value, and don't ever feel like you need to be kind of the quiet person in the room or skip out on saying something because you don't think you yourself are valuable, or what you yourself is going to contribute is valuable either. And I say that because a lot of us, not only are we going to be the first to graduate, we're going to be in rooms, boardrooms, offices where we'll be the youngest. We'll be the only person of color in the room. We'll be the only LGBT person, the only woman of color, right? And they need us there, right? And it's important to know that, so that, we don't sell ourselves short, but at the same time, bring our true authentic selves, be open about who we are, be okay with like presenting ourselves as is, because the world needs more of us. And, everyone is just better off when we like show up as our true authentic self. So that's what I would definitely say, especially as someone, who many times still experiences imposter syndrome to this day. This is not just something you can shake off, but I definitely think it's helpful when like you step into your power and you're like, hey, this is me, and we're going to come in full force, and either you're going to like it or not, but at the end of the day, I know I'm being true to myself. And I just got Jasmine's number, so I made it. So thank you so much, everybody, for your support. We're going to definitely connect after this.
And then Monica, I saw you unmuted as well.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback off of what both Jasmine and Nadan were saying in a couple points. So definitely with networking, but I also think that I didn't learn until later, it is just as important to get, those letters of rec and those relationships with people who are outside of your field. Speaking of which, Mario was literally just a reference for me on that research associate position. Is Mario a scientist? No. Can he speak to my character and my development and my passion in other areas and how I can benefit the office in different ways? Yes. So it's very important to like look at those other areas, like where you don't necessarily think that you'd find them. Because thank you, by the way, Mario, for that. Super helpful. And then also just going into like really the question, and I think some interview tips for those of you that will be getting interviews soon, that I definitely work to my advantage. Some of you, like myself, may not have the most experience built up. Like when I was graduating, I had, like those couple summers of lab internships, and then like a year when UCSD's labs finally deemed me like okay to work in their labs after getting the little bit of experience. I did not go into the workforce with a lot of experience, but I landed a super great job right out of undergrad. How did I do that? Because I spoke to my struggles, which are also my strengths, in things where they were like, how, like, why are you a good candidate for this position? Like when you don't have this much experience, I'm like, well, look at all of the things that I did with all of those odds against me. Just imagine what I can do when I have my full forced attention, like on this place, and just like wrapping around like things like that. Always like try to find, as cliche as it is, like that silver lining of being like, like I don't have as much experience as probably many of the candidates that you have, but I have the drive, I have the passion, I was the first in my family to find and navigate my way through this insane like college system. Like imagine like what I'm going to be capable of, like working for you. Imagine the passion and the dedication and the hard work that I will give you because you are giving me my first chance. You know, so just that was just like a little short tidbit, but that really did help. And I'm almost certain that that's what got me my first job, because I was really like, please, I will work so hard based off of, you know, like the things that I've done. So yes, so I think that's my little tidbit on that question.
Well, thank you all for sharing. Sorry, hold on, something popped up. The last question we have before we open it up to everyone else is, knowing what you know now, what words of wisdom would you give your undergrad self? We can go alphabetically by last name this time, Jasmine. So
wait, that's not fair because I have to go first, I think. I don't like that.
Hold
Oh,
on.
no, okay, go ahead. Go ahead,
Samantha's
Sam.
first. Hold on, how to do the alphabet again in my head. Samantha's first and then Adan.
Okay. Words of advice, words of wisdom to my undergrad self. I would probably say to stay connected. So I feel like a lot of what the other panelists were talking about is the power of connections and who we know, right? And constantly seeking out those that can vouch for us, right? That can speak to our strengths, networking. And I think for me, something that as a student, I would come across incredible professors, right? I would be invited to different donor events and meet all of these incredible people. But something that as a student, I was intimidated by was staying connected, right? It was reaching out, reaching back and saying, do you remember me? You know, like I would like to grab a coffee with you, or no one really taught me that. They said network. But again, as a first gen student at the time, I just didn't know how. And so afterwards, when I graduated and was applying for my master's program, I needed references. I needed people to, to speak to who I was, how I studied, how I, whether I'd be a good candidate to be in that master's program. And I thought back to all of the people that I wish I stayed connected to, and those that I worked for, those that I, felt like made a huge impact on me. And so that's something that I would recommend to all of you. I know that professors and other professionals that you meet can be extremely busy, but it doesn't hurt. The answer is always no if you don't ask, right? So it doesn't hurt to just shoot an email, right? That's how I've gotten some of the positions that I have right now, is just sending like a cold email of like, hey, I've heard about you. I've heard about this position. I'm interested, right? And yeah, so stay connected as best as you can, and don't be, afraid to do that.
I think the first thing for me would be to continue listening. I think that in the Latino community and a bunch of communities, there is such a big value of listening to your elders, right? And I didn't have anyone in my immediate network who had gone to school, nevertheless, made it successfully through. And so my first year, I was just making a bunch of rounds with people. I'm like, what did you do? How'd you do it? Why did you do it? How is it going? How can I do it too? Right. And that was how I was able to learn about so many different programs and opportunities and internships and fellowships, right? And, people before us have gone through this experience, and there was value in kind of their lived experience as well. And anyone would be happy to share kind of the do's and don'ts and the tips and tricks, right? So for me, as someone who didn't know anything coming in, that was one of the best things I could do, was to listen. And so definitely sharing that with everybody. Second, I used to be such a big planner. Right after I had all those conversations with everybody, I sat down the summer after my first year, and I was like, I'm going to make this 5-year plan, right? Or I'm going to plan out quarter by quarter, what classes I'm going to take, what I'm going to do on campus, what I'm going to do for the summer. And by my senior year, everything kind of had gone up in the air, right? And I was like, so many things happened that I didn't expect to happen. And I'm like, I don't know if this like planning thing is working out, right? But one thing I had learned to really step into was like following my gut and intuition. And I think that that is such a powerful thing we have as humans. And of course, some of us are better at tapping into that than others. But like that's such a powerful tool we have that like we're not taught to really tap into, or a lot of times society has us questioning like our own choices. But at the end of the day, it just has to feel right to you, because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one doing it, right? And as long as it feels right to you, it's fine. So I just got into just feeling myself out and be like, does this feel right? Do I want to do it? You know, and can I explain it? But no, even if I can't, if as long as my heart is there, then I'm gonna move forward with it, right? And so yeah, I'm still a little bit of a planner, but I'm definitely doing a much better job of like listening to my gut and just kind of following my heart, because I think there's just so much value in that. So I definitely share that with everybody else.
I'll go. I think I would tell my undergrad self that it's going to be okay. You're not alone, even though you may feel like the world is against you and that you don't deserve to be here. You definitely do deserve to be here. It just takes a little bit of digging from within and from your community to find your place. You're going to find it. You're going to find great people who support you and help push you further down the correct paths. Um, don't force anything. Like Anon was saying, go with your gut. I find I'm kind of a little bit of a perfectionist myself, like a planner. Like I could be described as a little high strung, just because I like to have everything be perfect and like time. Like I don't know. I just put a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect. And I think it's important to know that you're not going to be perfect at everything. And it's okay to suck at new things. And as long as you're brave enough to suck at those new things, then, you're going to be just fine. Yeah. And, go to office hours. That's important.
Guess it's me now. I guess in the same vein of what I said before, advice I would say to myself is don't take and spend that money, girl. It was Betsy Johnson back when I was in undergrad. I was buying all the Betsy Johnson, Juicy Couture. Yeah, I was doing the most. So don't do that, because future Jasmine will be paying for it. Second, pace yourself. I felt like I was doing a lot of different things. I was involved in way too many organizations, getting pulled and in all different kind of directions. I mean, the moment called for it, so when stuff goes down, you have to show up. But I would definitely tell myself and remind myself that it's okay to pace myself and not feel rushed into my next move, not letting imposter syndrome or anything else force me into making lifelong decisions that I might not be ready to make. And then some positives that I got from undergrad and advice I will give is to take all the naps. I loved me some naps, still do. If I do not take a nap like I didn't today, I am no use to the world. So take all the naps, make sure you are resting and replenishing yourself, and eat. Don't just be eating candy. I'm talking to you, Fanon. So it's very important to eat and exercise, talking to myself, so take care of your mind, body, and whatever that looks like for you. And then the last thing that I learned that was positive from undergrad is, it's okay to make people mad and uncomfortable and not feel bad about it. I love that about being at UCSD and yelling and screaming and calling people out. I have to learn how to, tone it down a bit now at work, but, it's made it really hard for me to navigate certain spaces and feel 100% comfortable, but I really loved it. And it's something I try and do as often as I can, make people mad and uncomfortable.
Okay, I think that just leaves me. I think that the best advice or like a talking to that I would give to my undergrad self is to just be kinder to myself. Um, we worked, y'all. We did the thing. Like everybody knows that UCSD is we did some work. So like be nice to you. Like when you don't do stellar on a midterm, hey, you'll get the next one. Like when you are tired, sleep. When you are hungry, eat. Like just be nice to yourself because you have already done so much. Like you have already accomplished so much just being in this panel right now. Like you are a first gen future graduate. Like you really did the thing and it's hard. And you should be proud of that. And you should be like, yes, I did that. Like even if that's the only thing you did that. You know, so be nice to yourself, I think is the most important thing. And then I think that just like a little piece of advice, kind of, you know, piggying back off of what Samantha said, is never be the first person to tell yourself no. I can't remember the exact statistics, so I don't want to say like a number, but it's something like just insane, like how much more often white men apply to positions that they do not meet the criteria for. Why can't we do that too? Like, you know, like, so that's, I just, you know, never tell yourself no. If you even kind of meet the criteria, like bachelor's degree in this kind of field, you need 2 years of experience. I have a half a year. I'm gonna send it anyway. You know, so just don't tell yourself no, and also be kind to yourself with all of that you've accomplished. You've worked really hard to get to this point and you should be really proud, and like take time to acknowledge that for you because it's not easy and you did it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm tearing up a little bit. Maybe my wife's cooking with lots of onions. Maybe that's why. But no, thank you all so much for sharing your perspectives and your advice for folks. And I really appreciated hearing each of your stories. But we did promise our attendees an opportunity to also ask questions. So I invite those who are in attendance, so our current undergraduate students, if you want to just either unmute yourself, I'll switch to gallery view as well as turn off the recording. So you can openly and freely ask your questions, and then just feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to drop it in the chat and one of us can read it for you. So I invite folks to